We will have a live Q&A session at the end. Feel free to use the Q&A function to post any questions or else chat as well. Everyone will receive a copy of the recording tomorrow, and I will drop our sales alias in the chat if you want to reach out to us today. Thank you again for joining us. We're excited to have your questions. We encourage your questions. This is an interactive session. With that, Erica, take it away.
Thank you, Adrian. Pleasure to be leading this webinar today to focus on how you can leverage OCR to accelerate your overall visual applications, specifically taking that model and performing best practices at the edge. So I'm Erica Gilbert. I'm a customer success engineer for our enterprise-based customers. I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts, and I have over 10 years experience working specifically with enterprise SaaS applications, but also over 5 years of those have been specifically with deep learning platform powered solutions across vision as well as NLP. So I'll be happy to walk you through the demonstration and provide some links and information that you can ultimately test and perform hands-on in a lab environment yourself. I'm just gonna minimize my video now since I've said hello to everyone so we can focus on the content here. Our agenda today is straightforward. We're going to walk through just some examples of OCR applications and where they're providing value in the enterprise. And then we'll showcase how, for those who are not yet an enterprise customer or have not yet activated their key for OCR, how they can perform some simple cloud testing with what's already available as part of your credit package today. And then we'll do a hands-on walkthrough of that setup with the Inference API, but then we'll move to the edge portion of the walkthrough where we'll set this up within LandingEdge and then review how this would be more scalable with a Docker implementation. And then, of course, at the end, as mentioned, there'll be time for Q&A and we'll answer any questions the team may have. Just at a high level, for those who are not as familiar with LandingAI, our goal really is to help accelerate the overall process for developing visual applications. So whether that be testing and proving out a concept or scaling in the enterprise and production, we do that across many different industries and verticals. So as a solution, we are industry agnostic. So whether that be agriculture or automotive, we have capabilities that likely can support your particular use case and get it to market ultimately faster. With that, we provide a platform that really helps accelerate all steps of the model operation process when it comes to visual applications. So extensive capabilities around data management, model training, and deployment. So a lot of sophistication in what is developed and at your fingertips with a platform approach that is very user-friendly and intuitive. Importantly, we want to talk about how you might leverage OCR. There are a lot of different types of OCR that have been around for a while, primarily working with pulling information from documents, but there are also now deep learning based models, which is what we're ultimately leveraging today, that can be augmented in different applications with other visual components like a classifier or a segmenter. But you can also use this just by itself to add value and help automate different business practices. So here, once again, looking across many different industries, we see for semiconductor, the opportunity, if you've ever walked into a wafer a facility and see there's a lot of complex processes happening where lots and components are being ferried throughout the facility, and have lots of information that are very important to track the specific lots, including product IDs, serial numbers, and batch codes. The traceability is really important here, as well as the overall quality control. And OCR really helps automate much of that process. And then we take a look at sort of the food and beverage industry from a retail perspective, where you might be doing audits in your actual grocery store, or as items come in, or when they're actually being shipped out from the facility, to make sure that the nutritional label actually complies with the important information, such as ingredients, but also critically expiration dates. So really great for both consumers and regulators to ensure that there's some level of accuracy and compliance in an automated fashion, where you're not just walking around recording that information. And then finally, from an agriculture perspective, there's also a lot of opportunity to embed OCR when you're looking at a lot of the reports that are very extensive from farmers and agronomists. I struggle with that word, but they record all of those crop conditions and soil information. And this can be often handwritten and then printed. Being able to leverage these documents in a digital manner makes them much easier to leverage the information that's contained within to search and analyze for better decision making, ultimately downstream. So you can see where this can come in so many different ways and add value to your current processes. What we're actually, from a business value perspective, just to underscore a little bit, when we think about the semiconductor use case, all those batch codes, part IDs, the goal there is really improving efficiency and ensuring quality control. There's multiple accessible reports that show how this allows these companies to receive 100% inspection, and also improves both their yield rate and reduces overall recalls. There's a lot of ROI from those independent components, and lowers ultimately labor costs, and means that there's less defective product actually coming out into distribution. So really great to save money on no wasted material, or very minimal waste material, and recalls. It's also great to understand, with the complexity of how information is printed, if the LandingAI OCR model could benefit or help your use case. Is this feasible? Looking at sort of use cases where there are handwritten prescription doctor notes, while we can read handwriting, it can only go so far. So just validating that we can consistently or reliably pull the information from what your application is very beneficial. So we always recommend, before pursuing and enabling the activation fee for OCR at the edge, to perform some test cases with the cloud credits that are already available to you today. So you leverage it the same way you would work with any of your models, like object detection or segmentation, with the Inference API, and of course tying to your own API key. So I'll walk through how you set that up, and I'll paste the code sample in the chat when we go through that, so you can follow along with your own LandingLens account and perform some tests yourself. I also have a set of sample data that you can use that's just pulled from Google image search for our particular use case that we're going to look at today. So our application today, actually, when we look at life science and pharmaceutical, there's a lot of opportunity to fold in OCR. So another different, unique industry that benefits from this OCR capability. Here specifically, when we're looking at the lab. So a lot of materials come in and out of the lab on many different sort of racks. And, it's challenging for the lab manager to maintain and keep up with that inventory. So the OCR can actually just be used to understand what's actually on the shelf and help if something is ultimately missing with other object detection models to flag for a reorder. And you can also make sure that if there's expiration dates that have been written on the different materials and chemical bottles, that that is flagged and identified for sort of removal from the lab. So really great application. And so now we'll sort of step through how you might leverage models in LandingLens, but how you can also more specifically work with LandingEdge to actually see the information contained within those bottles. There is important just notes a lot with OCR does require some post-processing to sort of parse and understand the results, primarily to look at how you can format data consistently because the outputs from, as you can imagine, all of these different manufacturers of these lab components look different and place information in different locations. And that's where also an object detection model can be beneficial to help you find that key piece of information and provide context to what the OCR models are identifying. So now we'll transition actually to the walkthrough portion of the webinar. So feel free to follow along, and I'm going to paste the link in the chat for some sample data. And this is a OneDrive location that should be accessible to anyone who has the link. So let me know if there's issue accessing it. And then the second piece here, I'm just going to paste the curl command that you would use to run OCR with your specific LandingLens account. So that's where we'll start with the Inference API, but then we'll move to the edge just after that. All right. So here I'm actually in LandingLens in my demo organization. You can see I have just a project here where I'm doing object detection for the individual bottles. You can see these are of varying quality, but the model is accurately identifying, in this case, the name of the supply. In this case, so we have methanol, lactic acid, some saline, etc. In this case, I don't actually need to deploy this model, but I do need to make sure I have access to LandingEdge. So just if you are following along and you don't have LandingEdge installed, you can go ahead and click this button here. It may also show in sort of a three-fold option here if you haven't created an endpoint yet, but just those options are there if you want to go ahead and download, while I showcase first how you can test with the Inference API. So you can see I pasted the curl command, but it would be the same for the Python or JavaScript samples. So you would just follow and make sure that you're importing the correct OCR predictor function for the Python and the JavaScript. But in the curl command, it's straightforward. It's just pointing to a particular prediction endpoint that's associated with OCR. So I'm going to pull that up. And you can see if you leverage Postman, which is sort of an application UI interface to work with code, you can just click the import button, paste the curl command. So it would import all of that information and you could give it a name, but I've already done that here, so I won't repeat. But now you can see I have in my header where I would place my API key. So here in your organization, under your username, you have your API keys available. And so I have this one that I've specifically identified for OCR, but you could really leverage any other API key that you have created. Oops. And then actually paste that into the value field for the header of your sort of HTML document that's working with this endpoint. So that's all you really need to do, other than selecting for the image ultimately that you want to process. So in this case, I'll run, let's do the second one here, or the first one. And then I'll hit send. And you can see I'm getting information in a JSON payload that includes text values from the OCR extraction, how confident the model is in that text value prediction, as well as the coordinates of where that ultimately lives within the image itself. And you can see there's probably some information that's inaccurate. A lot of this can be resolved with some basic post-processing logic. If you know specifically, can connect back to an inventory list. You can do some logical association with those values. But you can see this is actually the name of the distributor of the bottle here, with very good accuracy in this case. But this data payload can be consumed and then post-processed in a variety of different ways to work with the ultimate end system and application. So that's how you might test your different images with the current Inference API that's already in your, whether you're enterprise, visionary, or a free trial user in your LandingLens account. So very easy to set up. You actually don't have to develop ultimately or create any model or do any training whatsoever. It's sort of a binary response-based, though we've optimized the OCR model itself going forward. And so now what I'll do, assumption is that LandingEdge is ultimately downloaded. You've opened the application, and if you have an activation key, you would place it here and then save, and note that that activation key is accepted. And what this does is allow the OCR model to be selected as a model when you configure and create your inspection points. So the benefit of LandingEdge is that it's a UI-based system that is point and click that allows you to work with the models you've either trained in LandingLens, or in this case are available as part of your enterprise edge package. This is great for those who are not focused on building programmatic applications and would much prefer just a simple UI. But the benefit also of this is that based on wherever this is installed, which is typically an industrial PC, you can have multiple inspection points that may run different applications or different use cases. And you can actually tie those models ultimately together. And I'll show you how this might be accomplished as well. But this also works with different industrial cameras, so it can connect to Gigi or GennyCam compliant, and also works with other mechanisms of bringing in data like Folder Watcher, which is what we'll set up today, which is great if you're set up in a system that is connected to some more closed loop cameras. So as long as that data can be passed in the network drive to a specific folder, then you can work with the models you've developed or the OCR model in LandingLens. So I'm just going to add the inspection point here. In this case, it's just going to call it OCR because that's ultimately what we're doing. And in this case, my source for images is going to be a folder watcher. But you can see the different options there. We have a Swagger like web API if you want to do a very simple application to have the data be accessed and loaded. There's also an option to port video stream here. So a lot of flexibility. This will be a self sort of start for my overall inspection. In this case, I don't actually need to connect to the cloud, but I could if I wanted. Ultimately, this has some benefit because you can see different projects that have been activated for the edge and potentially pass that data back to the LandingLens platform. But LandingEdge is really great in those environments where there is no network or internet connectivity. I could actually be doing this without any internet connectivity today because I already have my images and the model now is loaded within LandingEdge after it's been activated. My mouse is being difficult for me here. So I'm just going to select, instead of loading models I made developed in LandingLens that are offline, I can load my OCR model offline. You can see the indicator that it's successfully loaded. And I'm going to use my GPU accelerator here. So dependent upon your size of images and your overall steps in a process, you can get very, very fast cycle times for these predictions. And we also offer for LandingEdge multi-GPU, so you can connect to more than actually just one. For my perspective today, I want to save the images and their results in a specific location. So in this case, I have my results here. I'm going to click this. And then I need to select my folder where when images are placed, they will ultimately be processed. And I'll showcase some options. So for example, if you were to leverage an object detection model to identify specific pieces of the supplies for inventory, you could add some logic here to connect to that model and run two different inspections in parallel. And we have options to include and some sample scripts that I'll show you in either C# or Python. But this is all I actually need to do for now. So I'm going to save this configuration and actually hit run now. So there are no images in the folder currently. So that means ultimately nothing is being processed. But you can see if I have my desktop up here, I have these two test examples. I'm just going to copy them. And then I'll move my Finder window over to the side here so you can see this happen and how sort of fast this will process. So now I'm in my folder watcher. And I can see that the model is actually pretty well and accurately identifying key information that is on this electrolyte solution. So that's super fast of being able to spend essentially no time in training and achieve results that I can then use to help automate my overall inventory management practice. What you'll also see is that as part of that, we are saving that information into a result folder. And you can use that JSON and create sort of information, whether that would be an Excel file that sort of updates in real time with information on what needs to be ordered or what is expiring. It's a great tool to apply some programmatic capabilities to your overall solutions. And you can just see an example here of the actual JSON results here with the information of sort of the name on the bottle and ultimately what it is. But you also get information about the image and the timestamp and what model it was using and how sort of fast the overall processing is. So you can see it's very rapid, sort of less than 30 milliseconds here if we probably add all of this ultimately up. So depending upon your use case and what you have available computationally on your machine, it might go slower, but LandingEdge works with a very simple sort of can work with CPU and a wide variety of different platform requirements. And I'll post a link to those requirements in the chat shortly. So as I mentioned, you may also want to leverage object detection to help orient and provide context to your specific OCR model. So in this case, I'm just showing how you would maybe develop such a solution. These are pulled from Google search, so they're not as even good quality of what you might get from a camera attached to a rack in a lab. But it was pretty clear that at least the name of the supply was pretty clear across all of these different examples. But you could focus on, again, if there was expiration date of when it was opened, all of that could be identified as part of this application. And then ultimately what you can do in LandingEdge is you can take this example of where you're running images through two different inspection points and provide some post-processing updates in that same configuration that I showed earlier, where you apply some custom processing, either in C# or Python. So again, a lot of complexity in what you can ultimately provide, but run sort of at full speed without any training of your particular OCR model. So the other option for deployment is obviously with Docker. So that's great really for programmatic use in sort of sophisticated model pipeline systems. Obviously, Docker is great because it provides a container with which all of the dependencies are, and the model itself is contained. The container contains. And again, is for those users that, unlike myself, are very keen on programming and scaling. So you could have, many containers running different models, sort of the same way you might set up multiple inspection points within LandingEdge. But the key steps for running OCR are very similar to how we set up for LandingEdge. You have to make sure you actually have the software available. You have to install Python, ensure that you have your activation key, so that you would just reach out to support at landing.ai if you've purchased that add-on. And then, work in your terminal command interface. And this is really the key piece, is the pull command that it contains the activation key. And then you set up to make sure that it's actually running, and the same process of running with the inference, the same way you do kind of with the cloud API. you can pull information from, in this case, we're looking at a button cap top to get that expiration date. So just a few lines of code to actually start running the inference. You can see it looks very similar. And I'm going to paste this link in the chat as well. And then the ultimate results are going to be very similar to what you saw within LandingEdge. So the actual text values, the confidence score, and where ultimately it is located. This is doing some sort of pre-processing to identify just the best by text, sort of understand that it's the 7/14/2025. So very straightforward and easy, especially if you work with Docker all day, every day. So a lot of opportunity for accelerating your different edge applications with OCR. So that's what we had planned to walk through. We went through that relatively rapidly, but I see there's quite a few questions in the chat. So I'll go ahead and start answering.
Great job, Erica. We have a few questions. Let me kick it off. First question, how to check our credits?
So within LandingLens, you should be able to see your usage. Right here under your name. So it should show with your plan and billing what is currently available, and then any recent detail on sort of what you've actually run credits with, and detail on the usage type. So whether it's inference or training, or in this case, OCR. Great question.
Excellent. And then how to create OCR inference in VSCode? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's an application. We could probably provide a sample sort of as a follow-on. Going forward. So we'll take that as an action item.
Great. And then it seems like the OCR does not work as well if characters are too small. Is that true?
Yes. So the sample images I pulled, I wanted to show that, OCR is definitely not a silver bullet. So there are edge cases where it will not be as performant. And that is why you want to optimize sort of your camera or whatever image acquisition system you're using to pull the data in. These were some very small characters, and so it was not that performant. We've also seen customers who, with success, have been able to work with handwriting, but there are just areas where if it's not, if your human can't really read or understand it, the AI is not going to be either. You can get some sort of basic information. So there are limitations, and that's why it's great to try from a cloud perspective just to see. And then maybe you optimize your camera settings rather than doing a lot of rework and sort of model development. That's kind of the benefit of OCR.
Excellent. And then we have a few more questions, and we actually have a raised hand. Let me get to the next question. Does the LandingAI solution require the creation of a template to support every application of OCR?
That's a great question. So there are a lot of different types of OCR. There's a more traditional version that is, especially when you're doing document reading, requires a template to sort of identify where in the image or document information lives. As you can imagine, just even looking at those different bottles, their formats are all unique. And so having to create a template for each sort of bottle type and identifying where to find information could be super challenging. So that's part of the reason why we showcased how object detection can help find the context of, in this case, where the name was or potentially an expiration date is across many different product types, and ultimately not have to define that template-based approach, which just sort of falls down when there's so much variability in how that works. So this is a deep learning based OCR model and does not require templating.
Excellent. And the next question is, what kind of OC model is being leveraged?
Yeah, that's to just expand a little bit more on saying it's a deep learning. We've actually optimized on top of an open source model. We don't share just because it's our own sort of proprietary information on what that open source model is, but it uses deep learning models for both the text detection piece and the sort of text recognition task. It includes pre-trained deep neural networks to identify and extract the text, and it uses architectures like CNNs to do the feature extraction, and RNNs or transformers to do the sequencing of the text recognition itself. So pretty sophisticated deep learning model.
Excellent. Next question. Besides plain text, can the model process contents in a table view, diagram, or chart?
Yes, it can. So usually structured data like that is relatively easy to pull out and digitize and use in downstream systems. But it can pull that information the same way you saw today. If you have like a snapshot of a chart, then you may just need some assistance in sort of organizing that information based on sort of the heading and titling of the chart or diagram.
Another question. I'm new to LandingAI and Visual AI. Can you recommend any starting point books or materials to familiarize LandingAI with Visual AI?
Yeah. So a couple actually reference here. We have a course. It takes, depending on your pace, roughly 3 to 5 hours. It will give you a badge to become LandingLens certified, but it walks through all of the different model types and projects. And then you get a little badge in the community. And then you can also import the certificate that's provided on your LinkedIn. So you get sort of those credentials. I'd also highly recommend looking at the Coursera available or the deeplearning.ai available courses on visual AI, particularly AI for everyone. It focuses a lot on visual applications and where they have value in the enterprise. And we can make an action item to put some links to those resources after the webinar.
Excellent. We do have a live question. I'm going to wait till we get to the end before we take that live question over our session. Next question. Is there a REST API doc for OCR?
So it is the same Inference API. You're just updating the endpoint. So we don't have a full document on that as of yet. It will be coming shortly. But we'll provide the sample that I showed today in our follow-on, and we can also include the presentation material so you can follow that you sort of step by step after the fact. Hopefully that answers the question.
Excellent. And feel free to type. We have a couple more questions here. Let me just get to them. Let's see. And continue to drop your questions in the Q&A feature. We can track this very easily, make sure that we follow up. Let's see, next question. Okay, it looks like I don't see any credits added for today's lab. If you can, in the chat, just send us your email address. We can check on that for you. And with
Yeah.
that, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so the each account should have a certain level of credits, but we can sort of on a case by case basis look at additional credit provisioning.
Excellent. And with that, we're going to tie the session up. We will be sending out the recording tomorrow along with the slides, as Eric is putting up here. Please join our community, take our courses, get certified. We also offer a free consulting session. That link will be available in the follow-up tomorrow. So if you'd like to just chat about your visual use case, get some recommendations, we're here to help. We really want to support you. Erica, any closing comments before we take this live question?
Yeah, no other comments. You saw how rapid that was to get, valuable information from key, products and things that we interact with every day, and just the wide variety of different applications that OCR can add value to. So
Excellent. And we had someone raise their hand. I've taken you off mute. You should be able to ask the question. Participant, if you want to go ahead and ask a question, you should be able to do it now. Let me know if you can. Let's see. Give it another few more seconds. Let's see. Do you have the option to ask us live? I've unmuted you. Okay. Looks like maybe feel free to text us. There will be a follow-up. I did drop our sales alias in the chat. So if you'd like to chat today about your use case, please use it. Okay, we actually have one more person who raised their hand. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi. I would like to know about more this also LandingAI and the LandingEdge, how the use cases, any samples, any supporting materials or videos or weapon, any other sources will helpful me to start from the LandingAI, please.
yeah, are you looking specifically for OCR applications or more broader across
Yeah,
the different
yeah,
landing?
but more broader and the OCR application that today you explained. I need to have a look with the hands-on.
Yeah, we can definitely provide some additional follow-on collateral as part of the summary we send out tomorrow with the webinar recording.
Okay, in case of any follow-up doubts or any any other things, I can contact Adrian or the email or to whom I need to contact the sales the LandingAI.
Yeah, so our development team will respond. It'll be Adrian or another team member that respond back if you email sales@landing.ai.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and ramp up. Oh, we have one more question. How to use the model in the industry after the model training to deploy the model in real time. Does that make sense, Erica?
So what you saw with LandingEdge was the model developed and actually deployed and running in real time. So that was all live action. Different customers incorporate the model in their production applications in different ways. LandingEdge is great for sort of industrial manufacturing facilities. Docker is commonly used to import into other systems and applications so that JSON payload is sort of run based on whatever image is passed through, and whatever business decision is driven by that information, they're sort of programmatically pulling that together in the production cases in the industry. Hopefully that gives some context to your question.
Excellent. And with that, we'll sign off. And again, we will be sending the recording as well as the slides tomorrow. And we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And I hope it was an informative session. We host weekly webinars. So take a look at our registration page for webinars to see the upcoming ones. The next one we'll be having is our utilities and energy on the 16th of October. We welcome you. So again, thank you. Have a great Wednesday. Take care.